Welcome to Benji's 912 engine swap project. You can call it a 912.6, a 911.5, whatever you want to call it, we're doing it. Today it's going to be all about plumbing. We're going to work on adding the oil lines for the 911 engine. We're going to add the fuel lines and the fuel pump, everything needed for that 3.2 liter engine that's going in this car. So please stay tuned.
Garage time.
The only thing I've done since last time is the brake pedal was going all the way to the floor. Remember, this car's been sitting for a number of years. So I did add some brake fluid, and also the battery was disconnected, luckily. So I have it on a battery repair device that will hopefully cycle it up and down a few times. Maybe it'll come back to life, but it's unlikely. Well, I think I now know why the brakes aren't working. This is a new puddle directly below the brake reservoir. I'll look into this a little bit more later, but it looks like the stuff's coming from the fuel tank, like the brake fluid's running down maybe on the reservoir hose. Maybe it's getting over here. All these nuts were loosened when the car was on the ground. Hey, while we're here, I guess we could talk about the brakes. These are the same brakes as a 911. Yes, they are solid rotors. No, they are not the same thickness as 356 rotors. These are thicker for more heat dissipation. For comparison, this is the 356 rotor. This rotor right here is an SC rotor, and it's thicker and it has vents in it, so the rotor can kind of cool itself down as it's moving. The diameter of the rotor is almost the same. In fact, it's exactly the same diameter. So you're not really getting any more braking power with these, you're just getting more cooling. And that really comes into effect when you're pushing brakes hard on the track. This is the brake rotor that's on my car, or one just like it. It's even thicker with even more vents in between there. So these are the Carrera rotors. Also, the same diameter. Same diameter on these rotors, and you know, I have larger calipers and so forth, but the calipers themselves aren't that much different either. On the standard 911, they were also cast iron calipers. The only thing they did with the vented rotors is they put a spacer in between there to make it wider so it would work with the thicker rotors. But the piston size, the construction of the caliper is really identical. Porsche did have an aluminum caliper for the S model, and it's a decent caliper. I think it has a little more clamping force. The problem with the S caliper is it's really lightweight construction and it's really a spongy pedal feel. So they all have drawbacks. In my opinion, these are just fine. Okay, and the reason why I took this wheel off and the rear wheel off to begin with was to run the oil lines. They're gonna come up here to an external oil cooler here right behind the headlight buckets. Find a way to snake these in there. There we go. So as luck would have it, there are no tabs to mount these oil lines. This car never came with it, and I don't think any of the cars in '67 had oil lines. These are my quick notes of locations of the tabs. There's 3 of them. But this little red dot here, that is the location of the tab, at least on my car, which is a 74. So we need to weld a tab there. There's one here in the middle, right there. Weld one there, and also one right here. Yeah, here we are again, fabrication time. I'm gonna make those bands 1/2 inch wide. Actually, no, I'm gonna make them 5/8 wide. This metal is 14 gauge, so it's pretty sturdy. There's one. Porsches like rusty metal. They always run better with rusty stuff, so started with some rusty metal for you, Benji. Just kidding, I cleaned them. Yeah, I think the factory clip had a self-tapping screw like they use on the fenders, 6mm. So I thought I would use this riv nut here, and then I'll bend the hat section. That'll give it the same 6mm size and probably never ever strip or wear out. Plus it's plated. So this is the riv nut clincher tool, and we just kind of thread that on. I kind of pay attention to the stroke length here, so I can say I want it to suck it down, 6mm. So I've adjusted that lock nut there. That's 6mm, and we just put it through here and give it the squeeze. All the way down to 0. And then just unthread it this way, or you can just unthread it that way. Traps it into the metal here, and that also creates a little strength to it. So I'm going to bend it now just where these red lines are, and that's going to bend it down. Second thought, I really should have bent the piece before I did the riv nut, but let's see if we can salvage this one. The riv nuts are cheap, but let's see what happens. The nice thing about this tool is it works on blind holes. There we go. There we go. We'll just add some holes here so we can spot weld it to the car. But the nice thing about this is it also is a spacer to keep the tubes kind of parallel. And so when we push this up and tighten it all down, it's going to really secure these. And then this shaped clamp will go in there like that. There's some rubber and a little spacer that goes in there, but that's basically the gist of what these do. So they certainly will need some epoxy primer and some undercoat, but for now I'm going to continue to assemble the tubes and just mock everything up. Got all the clamps in place now, and they're not screwed down all the way. I wish we had a little bit better alignment here with this dip in the tube for the jack spur, but nothing I can really do about it. I've got it shifted all the way to the back. Let me show you where it interferes in the front. Okay, so here in the front, that tube is as far rearward as it'll go. It's running right into that latch panel. I'm going to thread this guy in because it actually controls the position of the tubes, and then we'll work from this back towards the engine and the oil tank. Here's how it looks from this side. Those lines come all the way down, come up here inside this inner fender, and then that's where the thermostat goes. And it's not, tight, it's just finger tight, but these lines here are going to follow along up here over to the oil tank, which will go right here. These lines are new. They aren't that expensive. I think they're aftermarket ones, but I think the longer hard line goes on top. So we're just going to loosely put these in for now. Okay, roughly this is the position of these lines. I think this one needs to rotate just a tad. Let's see. Maybe rotate like that. You need to have tire clearance here. Now, I don't think it's going to be an issue with the 6-inch tires that are in this car, but we need to position this and clamp it down to the body so that there's good tire clearance. Okay, these are sitting loose, but there should be a clamp right here that holds it tight up against the body. My car has a 6mm stud that comes out right there, so we're going to have to weld on a 6mm stud and another clamp right there. Plan to get a stud attached to the car without drilling a hole and getting to the back side is to use a weld nut. That's what this is. It's a weld nut. And I'm just going to use a stud, probably Loctite it in there, and then I'll be able to put the nut on just like the factory did. So this will be the best approximation as I can get to what the factory did with the same size hardware and so forth. I opted for the TIG welder on this one. I think it's just a little cleaner, and I'll show you up close. Came out nice. So of course, this is going to get epoxy primered and re-textured as well when it comes time to do it all at once. It goes something like that. I'm not exactly sure what angles to orient stuff until I know where this attaches to the engine. So best to leave all this loose. Hey, moving right along, we have the oil cooler, and this is the front fender mount oil cooler. This is from an 87. So normally the 87 has a fan that goes on the bottom half, and it's got a thermostat and some switches and stuff. I hope for this car we're not going to need to use the fan. The previous Carrera with the 3.2 didn't have a fan, so I don't know. I think we'll try it without, but of course you can always add a fan here. That's a pretty simple thing to do. And then this thing is got a nice shape to it. It's really going to fit the fender, and that's to control airflow bypass. So this tucks in just like that. Looks like it's designed to go in there, right? So this one has one rubber isolated mount here, and there's nothing to attach it to on the car. And then down here there are these two tabs. If that was to extend up as it does with the ruler and just had a hole drilled in it, that would allow me to attach the upper part of the oil cooler. Looks like something as simple as this might do the trick. This is pretty thick steel. It's not quite 3/16, but it's a little more than 1/8 inch, probably 3/32 or something. So it's very sturdy. Got a little hole in there now, so I'm just going to mark it for a slight bend. Okay, I tack welded the new bracket in, and I just got this hardware in here kind of loose, but that's the isolator that came with the cooler. I did remove the headlight as I was welding there just to avoid damaging any of the wires. So you can see I got the nut on there. All the hardware is still loose. It's kind of hanging there, but the weight of the cooler is definitely supported by that bracket. Underneath here, there's this bracket that's really not doing anything. It looks like it's clamping these two pieces together. So I'm gonna loosen these and just swing it around and attach it to one of these slots right here, because I think that'll work perfectly. There's also this clamp up here, which I'll probably just need to get a longer fender bolt to attach that, but that'll kind of hold things from vibrating. You don't want these to vibrate and hit each other. This is day 2 this week on this project, and as I was making room to get my green machine back in the garage, you know, I had to take the car off the lift and put it down on its tires, and that's when I discovered a problem here in the rear. The tire does rub against the oil lines. It's actually this upper line, so it rubs right here, and it rubs right here, right where I put that clamp. So this is different. I looked at some other pictures and looked at my own car. The long wheelbase cars have an indentation in the tub for the oil lines, and this car does not. So that's where it's different. So I either have to sort of customize this upper line, or I need to run spacers on the wheel. So, or maybe both. So I'm thinking about options here. If you have any ideas, let me know. This clamp may not stay. It looks like I'm gonna have to route the upper line either higher or lower because it can't go right there. I looked at the 911S, the early 911S, and they run a totally different thermostat. It's actually in the engine bay, and they run the lines down up high and they go down inside the rockers. It's rubbing right here, right there on the tire. That's on the upper line. The lower line has some clearance, but not much. Here's a view from the bottom, and the lower line, like I said, has probably about 3/8 of an inch clearance. The upper line has none. So the oil line interference problem is my first kind of unanticipated obstacle. Not super worried about it. I think it's overcomable. It's just gonna be probably a custom routed line. So I'm gonna come back to that a little bit later. Think about it some more. Please leave me a comment if you have some ideas. And I'm gonna move now onto the fuel system. The fuel lines on these cars, they run through the tunnel. This is the stock fuel line, and it goes inside. There's a tunnel actually inside the tunnel. I'm not sure if you can see that in there, but we need to run a second line for the fuel injection system. One's a supply, one's the return. This is probably a little too small for the Carrera. I'm not sure if it would work or not, but we're gonna run a bigger line anyways and make this one the return. This will be the first hole I drill in this car, and it's gonna go right here, right next to the existing fuel line. That's where the 911 fuel lines are, so we'll put it in the same place. No surprises to anyone who ever works on this car again that that's probably a fuel line. Okay, I did drill that hole large enough, one for the fitting to go through, and two, I want to make sure I can use the factory grommet there, just like the other side is. It looks like someone put some silicone and junk on there. Okay, right here is where the fuel line is going to exit the front of the tunnel. So this is the existing fuel line, also gooped up, but there should be a rubber bushing in there. I think they're there, just gooped over. So it's going to be a little difficult to drill here. So I have this right angle air drill that I'm going to be able to hopefully sneak in there and just get the hole started. And then I'll make it bigger, probably with a grinder. I got the hole here in the front. It wasn't easy to do. I ended up having to start with a small drill bit and then use this carbide burr to basically just kind of go in circles to enlarge the hole. You may remember these fuel lines from my car. This is the exact same fuel line that I have in my car. This is stainless steel 3/8 inch stainless line. It has AN flares on really both sides. This is the inverted flare, but that's just so we can get it through the tunnel, and then it quickly goes to AN. So I've already got it taped up with a little pointy end here, so I'm going to jam it through the car. Here's the first look at the plumbing and the fuel pump. It's not going to be attached with zip ties. I'm just holding it here while I show this to you guys. This is the new fuel line. It's got a 90-degree AN fitting. This hose is too long. That came right off the engine test stand. This is actually the supply to the engine. So it's going to come from this hose. We'll go right to the tank with a pre-filter, hopefully. There should be a pre-filter in the tank. It's going to go through the pump, through the line, right out down to the tunnel to the back of the car. That's what feeds the engine. And then the return line is right here. This is the old supply line, but that's going to return right back into the tank. So that's the cycle right there. I will make a better bracket for the fuel pump to support it. It's very dark gasoline and it doesn't smell like gasoline. So good thing to get this stuff out of here. It's almost done draining. Bucket's got some old paper towels from the brake fluid earlier, but yeah, needs all new fluids. Here's the pre-filter I took out of the tank. It's plastic. The threads are plastic, the hex is plastic. These fittings are, it's like a brass fitting. And that tubing's a little small. It's probably 1/4-inch tubing, and the fuel line to the engine is 3/8. So this is a bottleneck. I would prefer something metal with today's fuels, with the ethanol probably attacking this plastic over time. I'll look and see if there's a more modern replacement for this one, but this will get us going as is for now. Then here in the rear, while the fuel was draining, I connected the flex line. This is routed right alongside the existing fuel line. These are more zip ties here. But the routing there will clear the transmission and everything. It runs along the seat pan right up against the side. And then the factory line goes through a hole here in the chassis. I'm just gonna run the flex line right up here where the electrical harness goes. And there is a sharp corner there. I'm gonna have to use a conduit, a metal conduit, to prevent that corner. It's a sheet metal edge from, slicing the fuel line. So I'll show you that next time as I get a little closer to getting the fuel filter mounted. I'm gonna use the Carrera fuel filter, probably somewhere there where that hose comes out. The oil lines, for the most part, are pretty well hidden. I wanted to get the oil tank mounted today, but these issues with the interference with the tire kind of has me on pause a little bit. I spent some more time doing some research, and so I'll come up with a solution. Let me know if you have any good ideas on addressing that, but clearly we want to run those tires, so we'll make it work. And thank you guys for watching. We did get a lot of the fuel lines finished, and I think we can put the engine in next week. All I have to do is electrical, and I'll show you what's up with electrical. It's not that hard.